So, since we have a finals game tomorrow, the first one, I was thinking, I was sitting and I really sat back and said, what does this finals mean for the players, especially the superstar players who are playing in it, right? So today I just really wanted to focus on really saying what impact. I know I had done a video like this the other day, but I didn't really expand on it as much as I would have wanted to. But now that we have the finals set, the two teams which are going to win the championship, one of the two is going to win it. I wanted to focus on what does this championship mean for these teams and for especially the superstar players on these teams. First, I wanted to look at the Miami Heat, and we have two guys who are the main catalyst for who does this impact the most, and that's Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler. Right. Then on the other tier, we have Bam, and then we could keep going down the list, but let's start with these two. For Jimmy Butler, winning this championship means being a top 50 player or not. You know, Jimmy Butler's always been one of these guys which comes up at every 25 years and people don't appreciate them enough and then they fade away. But Jimmy Butler has really proven time and time again that he's different from all those guys. You know, we always have those guys who have that dog in them, who come around, right? We had Reggie Miller, we had Paul George, we've had, even back in the day, you know, we've had guys who have shown that they are good, but they've never been good enough to really do anything, like win a championship, like Dominique Wilkins. Even though these guys are all probably Hall of Famers, and let's face it, that's a fact. Even if they're not, you know, like a first ballot, 100% Hall of Famer, most of these guys are probably going to make it. We've always seen that these guys come around and they most of the times they don't win a championship. But what I do want to focus on right now is what does this championship mean for Jimmy Butler? Jimmy Butler, if he wins this championship, he'll be inaugurated as a top 50 player of all time. You know, he has enough longevity. He has enough awards, right? He's been a two-way player all of his career. He has a Steals champion, a most improved player. Now he has an Eastern Conference Finals MVP, right? And he also has 6 All-Star appearances, 5 All-NBA appearances. But I think the most important thing is that he's been consistently the best player on his teams, and he's consistently dragged them to postseason success, even when they're not favorites. And I believe that that is something that Jimmy Butler is going to get recognized for. In 2020, 2022, and 2023 have been 3 years where Jimmy Butler has either been in the finals or 1-3 away from the finals in 2022. And he had subpar teams. Like, these weren't teams which had 2 superstars, right? These are teams which are just, you know, they're good, but they're not finals worthy teams, let's face it. But the reason why they get there is because of him. Obviously, Heat culture has to do, coaching has to do, but let's face it, you win through your stars, you lose through your stars. Look at a team like Philly, where they win by Joel Embiid in the regular season, they lose by him in the playoffs, and that's just the way that life is. For Kyle Lowry, I think that would cement him also as one of the great point guards of all time. I do believe that he's one of those players. Him and Kevin Love have basically similar resumes, where they, in their prime, they were awesome, but after that, you know, they haven't really done anything apart from be just great contributors to great teams. Like, there hasn't been a postseason yet where Kevin Love hasn't made the finals in the playoffs that he's been in, and obviously a big part of that is LeBron James, but honestly, we do have to consider that he is a great player who does affect the game in many different ways. And now moving on to Denver, I feel like there's two main guys to talk about. And that's obviously Nikola Jokic, but then we also have to talk about Jamal Murray. We all see Jamal Murray and we wonder, like, who is this kid? Why is he so good in the playoffs, right? Like, he's never made an all-star team. He has pretty, inconsistent and, like, sleepy, averages in the regular season. Like, he's averaged 40% from three once. He was close this year. He's never averaged 50% from the field, and he's consistently been just, there. But then you look at his playoff numbers, and as you see, everything goes up. He went from averaging in 2020, he went from averaging 18 points a game to averaging 26. And this year, he went from averaging 20 points per game to averaging 27.7. So it's like Jamal Murray wins this championship, and I think he starts getting recognized as one of the great playoff performers maybe ever. Of course, it's easy to put him higher than he is, seeing what he's done, and also it's easy to do that because we have such recency bias with him. But I think that Jamal Murray could easily cement himself in NBA history if he keeps playing like this in the playoffs, and if he can win a championship. I think that would be the first step to potentially a legendary career, since he's only 26 years old. And if he's already playing like this in the playoffs, imagine when he gets to 28 to 30, which is most dudes' primes. That's when they most of the time just figure it out completely. Of course, injuries are always tied to his career, and that's just a fact. But let's face it, if this guy keeps playing like this and being like this, then it's going to be hard for him not to finish with a legendary career, especially if Denver keeps having one seeds. Eventually, they're just going to start inaugurating him into the All-Star team due to seeding. And the elephant in the room, of course, is Nikola Jokic. What does a championship mean for Jokic? And we've talked about this, I've talked about this, people have talked about this, but I think that we don't really understand how crazy a championship for this guy would be. First, he would officially become the greatest player in the league right now. I think that would cement itself because of his playoff wins, what he's done with his team for the past few years, where he's carried them into the playoffs, his averages, and the way that he plays the game. And also, I think that if he wins the championship this year, we're seeing the start of a top 10 player. Because look, his team is peaking, right? Like all of his teammates are in age, right, in sync with him, to all, progress as they go, and they have enough assets to be able to change teammates in case one gets too expensive or this or that. So in terms of team, they have it figured out. They didn't, break their own back like the Warriors did, right? They also have, enough players and enough star power to just lead through them, where we can see that both of their stars are phenomenal. And if he wins a championship and the finals MVP, of course, then we might be seeing a top 5 player ever. He already has 2 MVPs, he has 5 All-Star appearances, 5 All-NBA appearances, and he plays the game in a certain way where if he keeps playing like this, in the regular season, he's chill, he, does everything that he needs to do, he's just efficient, he shoots well, and he just, assists, play makes, whatever, and then in the postseason he just comes in and destroys everybody, right? Then we might be seeing the next best player, right? We saw it with a guy like Giannis, and him winning that championship in 2021 has put him in top 25 conversations, and we've seen it with a guy like Luka, who people have said that even if he wins a championship, then he's top 75. So for a guy like Jokic, who has enough longevity awards, who has now a Western Conference Finals MVP, which is now an award which we have to take into consideration because it is now a prestigious award. And now that he has 2 MVPs, are we looking at this season as if Nikola Jokic wins this championship, what is his future trajectory of his career? And honestly, that's why I'm so excited for these finals, because whoever wins is going to have one player who's going to either cement their legacy or just be great even though they lost, right? Like if both of these guys lose, no, if one of them loses, either or Nikola or Jimmy, it's not gonna matter. It's gonna cement Jimmy's legacy as a playoff performer and as a guy who could carry his team consistently. And if Nikola Jokic making his first finals, we could blame that on just, if he loses, we're gonna say that he's just too new to the finals because it's facts. But in my opinion, whoever wins this series is gonna change the game, and I believe that this season is gonna be one of the most impactful NBA finals of all time. So yeah, let's see what happens.